a bit more about the way the film was conceived. What were the initial thoughts? What were the expectations with, what it was going to be, and
Well, first of all, I'll say that when we started this film 13 years ago, no one in America had ever thought about it. In fact, most people, if they didn't understand the power of music, or they didn't understand what it was like to live under a totalitarian system, they couldn't make the connection at all. They didn't. They thought I was crazy when I told them. And so what happened to change that? My partner in the film, there was one scene in the second half of the film. They were in a California living room, and the Russian man with the white beard was singing a song. And my partner was sitting there with his wife and daughter. And he happened to be in the right place at the right time. In 1974, Henry Kissinger, who was the Secretary of State in the United States, negotiated a wheat treaty with the Soviets. They had had a famine and they needed wheat, and so they agreed to allow Jews in the Soviet Union who had been treated horribly for several centuries to immigrate to Israel. So every Soviet rocker who had some Jewish ancestry, and like the guy in the beginning of the film who invented the Soviet electric guitar, and he formed the first Soviet rock group, the guy with the black hair, he married a Jewish girl. And so they would find a way to get out of the country. And what had been agreed between the governments is they would send them on a train to Vienna, right next door, and Israeli administration person, government person, would meet them in Vienna, hand them an Israeli passport, and put them on a plane to Tel Aviv. Except all the rockers, they didn't want to go to Israel. They took a train down to Rome, and they went to the U.S. Embassy, applied for political asylum, waited for a visa, and they all went to San Francisco. They had heard this magical thing, what was happening in San Francisco. And Nick, at the time, while he had a rock band at night, he was vice president of Chase Bank. And he got a big space for them all to live, to rehearse, to record. And eventually they became his band. Some of the members became his band. And so he toured there, and they had a hit record, and they were on radio and TV. So we had dinner one night in New York. We hadn't seen each other in 37 years. And we had gone to college together in France, and he helped me set up my first tour in France that got me started in this business. And he's telling me about his Soviet rocker friends, and he said, you know, all of these guys passionately believe that rock and roll was the biggest reason for the collapse of the Soviet Union. And I'm sitting there listening, and I, like him, we both major in international relations at the university, and spent our life in music also. And I could understand, I had worked in the Soviet Union as a consultant, bringing, for the Soviet Ministry of Culture and the State Department here, bringing Russian acts to America and sending American acts to Russia during Gorbachev's era, Glasnost. So I understood, and I thought, my God, do I want to be involved? Because I see this is going to be a complicated, not like, you know, some little river in New Jersey that was polluted and we do a film on that. This was more complex. And so 2 weeks later, we got on a plane to Latvia, because we had learned that's where rock and roll first entered the Soviet Union. Because if you think of Riga, where it is on the map, it's on the Baltic Sea, across from Finland and Sweden. They couldn't block the radio transmissions into Riga. So actually, the two Latvian, that man with black hair, and Pete Anderson, the man who was nearly beaten to death, they were playing rock and roll in the late 50s, and in Moscow they didn't first hear rock and roll to the Beatles. So that's where we started, and we interviewed Pete Anderson, and he was our first interview subject, and he said, I was arrested a dozen times by the KGB, they tortured me, they beat me nearly to death, they threatened to kill my family. And he was singing teenage songs that 14-year-olds would listen to. So we thought, if the Kremlin considers him so dangerous that he could influence Soviet youth to want to go to America or align themselves with America, then we realized this was a serious problem. We had to keep investigating. So basically that's how it started.
Bohužiaľ, povedal som, že bude krátky rozhovor, lebo Kino Lumière má iné filmy. Ešte raz chcel by som vám poďakovať. Ďakujem Diana aj Kino Lumière, aj vám všetkým. Sledujte našu webovú stránku Odvaha byť slobodný, aj tiež našu facebookovú stránku USA and Slovakia, lebo máme dosť času taký podujatie. Vždy sme veľmi, veľmi radi vás uvidieť. Ešte raz ďakujem pekne. Ďakujem za